Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am going to call the meeting to order. I will note that we have our minutes from the July 25th, 2019 meeting and entertain a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. I will also note that all board members are present with the exception of Ms. Hudson and Larry. Okay, moving on to our report from the Secretary. Joe.
Yes, good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I have two items this morning. The first is staff thought it would be helpful for all board members to have the letter from the superintendent regarding the Ed Smith status. So I've emailed and handed that out to you.
Great.
If there's any questions, you can entertain them now or later. And second, I'm pleased to report we have a contract ready for the Fowler Fields project.
Great.
There was a challenge meeting the diversity plan, and Lamont Mitchell is here if there's any questions about that when we reach that item on the agenda.
Good.
And that completes my report.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, next up, our program manager, Chris.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right.
All right, so
Tell
I want
us,
to run.
Chris. How
I'm
are
sorry?
You tell us. How are we?
We're busy,
Okay.
in a word. Very busy. So we got about 13 calendar days before we bring kids back into the building again, and we're going to use every one of them. So we're all out on all the buildings. So
right.
we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into it.
Tell us more.
Sure. Just under procurement, wanted to highlight, Joe just mentioned that the contract is here for approval for the Fowler Fields. We got that completed, and we'll get started on that as soon as we already had a kickoff meeting and had conversations, and we're geared up for that. So I want to get mobilized over there and get started. So Henniger, just to keep tabs on that, November is what our procurement is for that. Under design status and approvals, Henniger did get approved, and so we're moving forward there, and we've also reconciled in terms of what we're doing dollars and cents budget-wise on that one. So under the construction date, and I just asked that we're moving very quickly out there, and these updates here that you see are as of 8/16 when I prepared the report, which would have been last week. Nonetheless, moving through Fraser, anticipate getting final payment on that if in October or sooner, depending on that. We're really dialed down to a few little items that are left there, punch list items, and get that one dialed out. Blodgett, we're moving, again, full speed ahead. The window replacements, we're making good progress on those. A majority of them, I've tagged 85%. We're probably a bit more than that at this point. And then the focus right now is to getting us back to occupancy, which is cleaning, starting on the 4th floor, moving down through the building. And if you will walk into there on the 1st floor now, you'll see that we're still very much in motion on that. It will be, but we have a plan at every single building as to how we're going to reoccupy the buildings. That plan has been identified. It's highlighted. There's one for every building that says how we're going to reoccupy, the sequence in which we're going to do that. Combined with that is we have a life safety checklist that we're using as our guide to making sure that we restore all the life safety systems to ensure that we have all the provisions required to open school on the 5th. So that applies kind of unilaterally to every single building. I would say also what applies to that is that we're in that mode of, in many areas we're starting to work our way out of the building and clean, and then some areas we're still actively working and will do so until such time that we can't, and then the plan is to kind of cordon off that area in such a manner that will allow that work to continue on second shift or off shift, whatever the case may be. And that's, again, kind of a broad statement that applies to all the buildings at the moment. Beyond that, we can kind of step through at Grant. Again, same concept that we're pulling back and starting to restore areas and put them back. We are going to actively have work going on at Grant beyond this. The exterior masonry and the restoration work will be in good shape, but I'm still going to have site work that will continue. I'm going to have paving. The top coat of the paving will happen after school begins. Right now, the site is restored in terms of base and binder, so everything is paved and striped on a temporary basis, and then we'll have to come back and pave the rest of it. Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you.
No worries.
Good.
Huntington, again, excuse me, moving over there as well. You're going to see a pretty significant transformation on that here in the next, like I said, 13 days, where we get the driveway paved out and we start restoring the front of that building. If you drive by there now, it still looks very much like a construction zone, but the plan is to get that restored. may or may not, depending on where we go in terms of the grass. If we put sod there, you may see grass there. If not, you'll see hydroseed there when you come by. But we're moving through that one as well. Bellevue, our focus at Bellevue, we're going to reoccupy that. That's in good shape. Where our focus right now is just getting our mechanical system started up and to get our life safety systems all dialed up and get our final inspections there. Mechanically, as you know, that job's been one that has been a challenge from the beginning, and that's probably our spot that we have our most focus on, but we have our arms around it and we have a plan for it, so they're moving forward on that one. On the Fowler roof, that's gone really well despite the weather. The contractors made up a lot of ground over there. We'll have all the roofing material completed and back on prior to the opening of school. The only thing that may linger into the fall would be the metal work, the trim on the perimeter of the upper roof, or at the perimeter of the roofs. But that may even be further along than that may even finish, but we're not certain of that yet. But again, that's a non-disruptive type of operation that we can have over there. At Corcoran, this is another one that's continuing into the fall. We tore more spaces apart in anticipation of having work that will progress through the year, and so we're in the process of restoring those rooms, getting up temporary partitions, and restoring the life safety stuff, getting bathrooms back into functional state, and that kind of holds true for Nottingham as well. So both of those jobs, we took off a fair amount of demo during this summer so that we have an opportunity to continue to work through the school year in those spaces. Questions? I mean, I've also got the teams here, the CM teams here that are the day-to-day on the ground managing those operations in the field. So if there's questions that you have regarding a specific building, I'd ask that we engage them, and if there are any questions on those.
I do,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor. Just real quick on the Grant, the roof on Grant. How far along are we at with the roof on Grant?
Nate, you want to?
Morning. We have the vapor barrier done on the library. We are in the process of tearing off the skylights and the roof material at the two lower courtyard roofs. And then we still have a significant amount of work to do at the auditorium. So we still have to rip the membrane at the auditorium, and there's two large skylights up there that we still have to get completed.
What would be the anticipated completion date for all of that work on the roof?
All of the demolition will be done prior to 9/4, prior to the kids coming back to school. The intention is to get all that removed, get the new materials loaded on the roof so that the crane use, because that's really the issue there, is very limited, either before school or after school. Once school starts, and then we'll likely be there through the middle of October, end of October, getting the new roofing systems at that building completed.
Just as you know better than I do, the season for roofing and paving is short, and the weather starts turning here. So, I'd be interested, Chris, you talked about the roofing project. You talked about the roofing project at Fowler. Just the next time we meet, an update on that Grant and
Sure.
Grant and Fowler.
Yeah, the Fowler, as Chris mentioned, the Fowler roof project, the membrane is all replaced there, so we're not battling weather elements there. That's really the edge metal details that are really weather, not dependent on weather.
No, I appreciate that.
The largest issue at Grant has been and continues to be the removal of the skylights. We've battled that and discussed it ad nauseum with the contractor for pretty much the entire project.
And just point of clarification, when we say skylights, I don't want anyone to think that it's the normal 3 foot by 5 foot skylight that you have on a residential. I mean, these are significant structural elements, skylights with framing and concrete curbs, and the removal has been a bit different than anticipated in terms of how and what we're going to do to infill those. So that's the complication to those, just as a point of clarification on that one.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So I have more questions, I think.
Sure.
So if you're
Can you
gonna-
just pick one of those mics and just speak? Thanks.
if you're going to be working on the roof during school hours, is putting the roof back on, that's pretty disruptive, isn't it?
Yeah, we won't, anything that's disruptive to the students, we won't do during school hours. The roof over the library, the membrane, is intended to be done before school starts. That's the area of the school that the students will occupy. The courtyard roofs, there's largely storage spaces underneath those courtyard roofs. And then the auditorium roof, there obviously isn't activity in the auditorium every day. So we'll coordinate that with the principal. And if we have to work second shift there to get that roof done so that we're not disruptive, that's what we'll do. That's not a typical roof installation. You're kind of inside the building. So the concerns of working at night with leading edge and things like that are significantly reduced. So that will be the plan there. That will be the plan at all the buildings. There won't be any disruptive work taking place while students are in the building. So we'll manage that, and that's, as Chris alluded to, that's part of the plan that we have developed.
They're pretty confident it's going to be done before winter.
The roof?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I appreciate you guys walking around with me. I'm still very concerned about Blodgett. I'm so concerned about Huntington. I'm concerned about Corcoran. I'm concerned about Nottingham. I'm concerned about all of them except Ed Smith, because we made a decision that we're not going to open there. The contractors are saying we're going to turn this into you by this day, and it's not happening. You're saying we have 13 days. We have staff coming back to some of those buildings on Monday. So what's the plan? And the workforce, I mean, some days I go there, there's a lot of people working, some days very few people, so I know we're competing because there are other school districts behind, but these facilities were supposed to be turned to us already, so I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, as Chris, we've outlined and we have color-coded plans for the progression of that work. They are meeting those dates. Work is progressing to those completion dates. I understand those completion dates, some of them extend out into next week and then even the days before, just days before school starts. But the progress, if you're measuring the progress against those dates, things are turning over and they are working towards those dates. So
You said a second shift. I'm going around the buildings around 7 o'clock, and I only see my custodial staff working in those buildings, most of them.
Yep.
The people are not there to work.
Understand. The issue with second shift right now is that there is no manpower to run a second shift. So the contractors are working extended hours. Second shift is great if you have the manpower to do that, but that workforce to work that second shift, if it's out there, we don't have it identified. So that's the challenge that we're up against. They are working extended hours. We had every building was working on Saturday.
Several on Sunday.
Yeah, and then there was contractors. We had almost 30 people at Huntington on Sunday as well. So, we're lining up commitments for this weekend as well, Saturday and Sunday. And then we have commitment from the general contractor on the Huntington and Blodgett project that they will work through Labor Day weekend if that's what it takes.
Can they deliver? Because we have had commitment from them and we haven't seen it. And next weekend is, Labor Day weekend is the big weekend in Syracuse for people going to the state fair. Sorry to say it that way, but it's a priority here instead of construction.
Understand. I think we have the plans outlined. We're managing with the general contractor every day to meet those dates, and I feel confident that we're going to get there. So I think we have a plan outlined. Understand we're not in an ideal position, but we have a plan to get there, and we're making measurable progress against that plan. So.
Mayor, outside of this governing body, is there a way to? There is a way. And you don't have to answer it right now, but having an ad hoc committee looking at these things that Jaime raised, and this committee is meeting or somebody is meeting every couple of days, updating the process. So right now, I'm making this up, we're at 75% complete. I would just hate for us to wait next month and have this same conversation next month. It seems to me there has to be a more proactive discussion to find out what the status is. Because Jaime's saying that, there's no workers on particular days where there was an expectation it should be. We can be looking at this a little closer. All these schools, if they're all not ready for opening day, it's going to be disruptive to our educational process. That's Commissioner Bodie spoke about, it's part of the reason it's hard for kids to learn all the other issues, and then you have hammers banging and things like that. So it just seems to me we can't wait for another meeting, is basically what I'm saying.
And I have to say, residents are calling me very concerned because they say, you've told me that they're going to be working these many hours, and this is a daytime and nobody's at the school. I mean, I'm getting calls from residents. They're very concerned. So there has to be a way for you to ensure that when people say that they're coming and they're going to be working, that they're there. Because there are times when there isn't. And in one school, a window was left open, a resident had to call the principal and tell the principal the window was left open so nobody would break into, they could have just walked into their building. There's a lot of concerns in the community right now.
Understood. And so two things I want to address. The one is, what do we do? We meet weekly, obviously, as a...
Chris, can you be clear on who we is?
Yeah, well, let me start with what we've implemented is we have a 7:30 call every day. So the construction managers, myself, Tom, Dean, Jaime joins in occasionally when he can. We're having that call every day from 7:30 to 8 o'clock or thereabouts to hit the high points. What are we doing? What were the commitments? Has it been delivered? Where are we with it? So that there's just communication. That's just to enhance communication. Beyond that, there's meetings every single day at every single job with your team and with LaChase's team to keep that moving forward. So the community.
Chris, that's sufficient. Then I wouldn't want to bog down the process with more bureaucracy. If all of those parties are meeting and you're having those conversations, that's great.
Right.
I would, as a board member here, though, want a status update. Again, it's a little bit more bureaucracy.
Meetings are taking place, the delivery is not being done.
So how can we enforce?
Discussions are taking place, but, okay, we're going to give you 6 classrooms by this day. It's not happening.
Right. The commitment on the other piece, which I can speak to, is like any other commitment, right? We get a plan, manage to that plan. We try to, but if people don't keep commitments, is the pure nature of what we're doing, is how do we recover from that? People break promises to us all the time. We're told that they're going to have 5 people here. We show up, there's 2 people. We call them up, we call them on it, and we drive to get that commitment made. But at the end of the day, that personal commitment that folks are making, they need to live up to that too. Everybody needs to pull their weight, and it's no different than anything else. So what we do is we constantly adapt to that and say, okay, you didn't, so what are we doing? We had an issue last weekend. There was a big missed opportunity. We've regrouped on that. What are we going to do make up for that? They're going to work 12-hour days this week to make up for the lost time that they had last week. That's what we're doing, and we're doing that constantly. It's a constant regroup. The closing windows, closing fence gates, again, it's another one that we're having perpetual calls from probably 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night of just trying to communicate and make that happen. There's a lot, and I'm not making any excuses, but when we have this many projects going simultaneously, there's a lot going on everywhere. And to some extent, we're even talking to each other because we'll look at a contractor and say, you're down 3 people, where are they? So then we start pinging and we find out that they took the 3 people from this site to your site over here because they got heat on them over on this one. So there's a lot that goes on, and we're used to getting told partial truths, I'll put it that way.
Can you talk about your mechanisms to hold the contractors accountable for those broken promises?
I can, or you can. We're meeting, like I said, every day with them in terms of making sure we have alignment in terms of where they're going. That's to start. Them meeting that requirement is really, to some extent, becomes down to that person and their commitment to it. And if you're speaking to how do I penalize them for not doing that,
or
that's a challenge. I'll just be honest with you, that's a challenge. In public municipal work, our teeth aren't as sharp as we'd like them to be in terms of, holding them accountable, fiscally accountable is more of a challenge. Do we have are we helpless? No, we have a mechanism that says we can come in and we can take over the work. We give them a 3-day notice, and then we have the opportunity. But therein lies another challenge of how do I procure that hammer to go meet meet all the procurement requirements that we have in terms of that, and mobilize those folks quickly enough to take that work away. And the reality is that a lot of the folks, they fully understand how complicated that is and understand how that works. So does that answer your question?
Kind of. I think my bigger concern, there's not a whole lot any of us can do at this point in this final stretch other than, expect that you're going to do your job and that the contractors are going to do their jobs. I'm wondering how we got here. And maybe, I want you to tell me if I missed it, but, when I look at, we get these sheets every month, and we go through the constraints and critical issues. The only school that has consistently been on my radar has been Ed Smith, that was at risk for not being complete before the beginning of the school year. So I guess the question is, are you did this catch us by surprise? Are you surprised that we are where we are with these other schools, or have we known this all along?
I'll speak.
And if in either way, what happened? How did we get here? And I know that's not an easy question to answer, but I think it's one that we all need to.
I think how did we get here? I just want to address, and you jump in here where you need to, but I don't want been doing this a long time, right? My Labor Day is never peaceful, never has been. We are doing a tremendous amount of work. You've seen the work in place numbers. You see the requisitions that we're approving on a monthly basis. We're doing a lot of work.
Right. Which we expected, and you signed up for, right?
Correct. And we're always pushed to this like any other deadline, right? And we're trying to accomplish a tremendous amount of work in about an 8 or 9 week period, a very intense period. We go through this every year. I think you can say that. I think everybody, the Chase's team would attest to that, nod their head to that. It's always stressful at the end. So there are pieces of how we got here that were not anticipated. There was things like structural issues at a couple of the buildings that we did not anticipate. There was asbestos that we unearthed when we broke into walls. We're dealing with buildings that are 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Has there been, and that's been carried on my minutes or on my report here under discovered conditions. And those discovered conditions, we then have to assess, get a price, get SED's approval to go above the $35,000. That adds time to it. So have there been those factors? 100%, all the way through. So that, how we are where we are, we face this challenge every year. And I know that's probably not a great testament to, but it is what it is. In the schoolwork, you're doing a ton of work in a 10-week period. You have to.
Two related questions. One is for those issues that maybe aren't common in this home stretch here. I think we would all benefit from kind of a post-mortem once we get done to see how we might be able to avoid some of these situations going forward. Again, we understand that we're working with old buildings and there are surprises as with any project, but again, it shouldn't be a surprise that there are surprises, and it shouldn't be, we knew how many projects we had to do, and so that's my first request. I guess my second question is, anytime we're all rushing, I think we would agree we're not usually doing our best work. So how are we ensuring quality control here?
You want to speak to?
We've upped our staffing. We've increased our staffing. We have 2 people on almost every job at this point. So we've got eyes on the grounds. We've increased the architect engineer inspections and frequency with which they're on site. The school district representatives have amplified their visits to the site. So the quality issues or any quality assurance type measures are in place. It's again through communication. We're getting that stuff documented. And so that we can fix it or correct it down the line. Eventually it'll end up on a punch list. We're trying to avoid that, but everyone's amplified their efforts to make sure that we're doing things to a high level of quality.
And With respect to buildings, we know Ed Smith has been on the radar for quite some time. Bellevue's been on our radar for some time. We've reported out on that multiple times. You know, Grant and Huntington and Blodgett, I've carried those for the past couple under the constraints. Not that it's a code red, but we've got concerns.
Right.
And those concerns have carried forward in terms of our ability. I mean, to point to one in particular, Blodgett, we found can you hear me? Okay. We found a significant, I don't know if you want to speak to the structural issue that we unearthed at Blodgett with the bathrooms.
Yeah, I mean, there's a structural crack on the boys' stack of toilet rooms it's on the third floor. So the boys' stack of toilet rooms was supposed to be completed this summer. That was unearthed towards the end of July. Right now, the issue is getting the material to make that correction. Since everyone is flat out, there is no one in the fab shops to be able to prepare the steel. So, I mean, that's a significant issue that happens. I mean, we're working on 4 floors, and it happens on the middle floor, which prevents the completion of plumbing or HVAC work or any work from taking place. So we've come up with a workaround so that we can at least get staff toilet back on the 4th floor and then continuing to progress work on the 1st floor. So we're in that instance, we're working you know, around the problem to continue to progress work. You know, at Huntington, which I think is one of the significant concerns. You know, we have close to 600 additional man hours removing plaster ceilings there that was not anticipated. So that is significantly holding up the interior work, or was holding up the interior work. All systems work. None of that could take place. On the outside of the building, we have 8 days, close to about 1,500 cubic yards of material that was deemed, that had to be removed, that we were not anticipating from the parking lot. So from a schedule standpoint, that hurts us, but those are the quality components that, right, we're not just going to blow over it and kick schedule to the wayside. I mean, they present a scheduling challenge, and that's what we're up against. You know, so those are a couple of the issues, you know, in addition to the grant skylights that, you know, that we mentioned earlier that we're working through.
Last question, and then you're up, Larry. So other than Ed Smith, understanding things can happen and you can't see the future, but I want to be clear, the expectation is that with all the other schools, we will have students in those schools on the first day of school.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Larry?
Mine is sort of
Yeah, why don't you grab the mic there?
on the mayor's question. I mean, first of all, I thank you. I mean, I know that you have done a great job with the critical constraints and the issues along the way, but I think the pressure here is, and the question I want to ask, I can't imagine that we would leave it up to our superintendent to go around and find out, you know, who's working, when they're not working the projects.
Hands-on.
Yeah, you know, well, I know that.
They're surprised to see me too, so don't worry about that.
I know that. But my question is there an alignment with, particularly with our district? I mean, is Tom involved with that process? Because to me, it seems like
Very
this
much.
is a matter of what do you know and when did you know it,
Right.
right? Because that might, you know, obviously the proactive measures have to get back to the school district. He might have to make a decision, well, we might have to make this school a swing school because this project won't be ready. But then the pressure becomes, if he's got to find out after the fact, I think that's where a lot of the the pressure. We got the promises. We know that this is a massive construction project. We all know that there is to expect the unexpected when you're doing these things. But it's also a matter of, when did you know? Who has the responsibility? I heard you mention team. But I guess my real question is Tom or somebody else from the district aligned with the CM so that there is ongoing communication to get back to you, so that if there's any proactive measures with saying we might have to make this a swing school because this school is not going to be ready, as opposed to it being reactive, we're going to open next week and we're not ready and we've got these critical issues. So I know it was multiple questions there, but
That's fine, and you can jump in here as well. To the answer, managing the expectation, that's what it's all about. It's in that communication piece, and I don't want to speak for Tom or Dean, but they're in the know on what we're doing on a daily basis. So much that it's consuming a fair amount of their time as well. But I want them to understand what we're doing. So that the answer is, and I don't want to speak for Tom or Dean, but I think the answer is yes, that you guys feel informed, you're there, you're involved, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're partially responsible for this too, for being pretty aggressive with our schedule. And going forward, I think we're going to more heavily scrutinize in the next 4 projects the schedule. We're also going to have tighter specs on protection of surfaces and on cleaning. So those are some lessons already we know that we're going to do on the next 4 projects. So yes, we know that. But we were pretty aggressive in asking them to get a lot of construction work done in a short period of time. The shorter we get it done, the cheaper it is, the quicker we can get the aid back. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. I work with these guys all day and all night. So they're emailing at midnight, 11:30, on, and first thing in the morning. So, and city staff too. We have people at every project meeting, and we're in the buildings every day. So.
Mayor, I know you said final comment, just what Tom said struck
No,
me.
as many as you need.
I appreciate the shared responsibility. That's great, Tom. I just find that interesting. This isn't our first project. I mean, we've been doing this. We've been doing this for years, and we just finished the first phase. So, just the comment about the scope of the project, I was in alignment with everything you said. That one threw me a little bit. No need to respond unless someone wants to.
We've never done this many at the same time.
Would you mind?
We've never done this many at the same time. So we're all learning. And there's only so much manpower in Syracuse. So lessons learned. And we are talking about the next 4 that we're bidding very soon, and we're not going to do some of these things again, and none of them want to hear me. There's certain things certain keywords I'm hearing, like all this asbestos stuff, we have to tighten it all up, know what's going on. Learn.
Don't say drinking fountain in front of Kelly.
Yeah, don't say drinking.
And I have heard about the workforce, that there is not enough people, but I also heard that contractors said that if they can bring people in, they'll be able to get the work done. So, is that accurate or not? I mean,
They're asking you to waive the PLA, is what they're doing, so.
I think as far as the workforce has gone, I mean, we've when we started hearing of the manpower issues, I mean, we reached out to Greg Lancette and engaged him, and I know he made a tour of the buildings multiple times, and he's pushing on his membership. I think from a proactive standpoint and things that we've done, and as far as engagement and alignment of the team, getting Greg involved and getting him engaged, that is something that we did. And he supported us, in any way that he did. So one of the mechanical contractors that's engaged on multiple projects is traveling people from Albany and Buffalo, despite the union agreements there. So you do have that in play. So I think recognizing that manpower is an issue, I do think we're taking the necessary steps to be able to get as many people engaged as we can. So that will be something that we will have to, lessons learned going forward for the next series of projects. That will be something that we'll have to look at, just the volume of work, and specifically the volume of the trades, the craft workers, if you will, and just how many people do we need for each project, and what's the max and the peak. So.
And with respect to manpower, because a lot of people state that, right? Well, manpower has been an issue. Manpower is always an issue on a project. You don't have it, you don't get the work in place. What I've done with Greg and what Nate has done with Greg is had very specific conversations. There are specific trades that we've heard for this summer. Not all. I just don't want that to be a blanket statement that, you know what I mean? But there are specific crafts that we have to bring in travelers, as we've said, In some of those, we can't even get the travelers to come. And there's other trades where we have available manpower. So, and there's a provision in the PLA that says that you put your request in. If the trades aren't able to make the request within a 48-hour period, then you have an opportunity to go elsewhere to bring that and supplement that workforce. So yes, it's been an issue this summer. Yes, it has impacted us. But we need to look at that. I'd caution people just to look at that more specifically instead of making a broad statement, then that gets carried back that, the trades weren't doing their part either, so.
Can you also, as we're doing our postmortem, can you also get us a list of those trades where you feel like
We've had a pinch?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a couple more questions. Okay, so you had said that the plan is for this week they work 12 hours to make up for what they didn't do last week. But you also said that there's a problem with getting workers for the second shift. So are you expecting the first shift to work all those hours every day? Or are you saying you have a second shift now that you haven't had before?
So I just want to be just clear on the separation. The projects that they're working 12-hour shifts to make up for last Saturday is at Bellevue, that CNS is not the construction manager, so the Chase is. Our expectation for our project, we have 10-hour commitments from the contractors for this week, plus commitments for Saturday and Sunday. We are currently working on getting the numbers and the crews so that we understand who on Sunday. We know we have a list of targeted craft that we believe should be there. So from our perspective, on the jobs that we're working on, 12 hours is not, that hasn't been a commitment from any of the projects that we're managing.
So do we have a commitment from the other company that they have people that'll work 12 hours?
Correct. And that's a very specific request for that particular building for mechanical systems, is where the commitment has been made.
So my other question is that when you said we have 13 days, and then the superintendent said, well, we have teachers coming in on Monday. So have you made arrangements with the construction workers that there will be teachers in the building and that they're going to be able to work around those teachers?
Yes, we're very in tune with that. The plans that we have talk about the occupancy, where we have it, where we'll be working, where they'll be working. The idea is not to coexist, but I said 13 days because I want to have an expectation that we're going to have people working in some capacity right up to the end. That's why I started with that, was just to make sure everybody clear that, we don't stop on Friday before Labor Day and that's it. I mean, we're gonna work right up to whatever we can get. So, and to answer your question, yes, we know they're coming in. We're keenly aware of that, and that's why we're trying to advance the plans of cleaning the building such that we can allow that phased occupancy. Does that answer the?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Anything else for these guys?
I think they'll be happy to sit down.
My final request would just be either on the day before school or the day of school, if we could just get an email update on the status of the projects, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly. And I just would like to say, we appreciate the patience. We appreciate all the work that the folks on the city staff and the folks in the school district staff. You've got some great folks, and they're all 100% committed to this thing, and that's what it takes to get us there. So I appreciate that.
And we appreciate all of you, certainly, our team in engineering, the construction team, school district. We all are being held accountable by our constituencies, and we need to make sure we're holding you accountable. But we know that you're working hard, and we appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
There's one question. Is the glass for Ed Smith on display?
We have 70 pieces in here in Syracuse, and the rest of them will be here too.
Great. Thank
We'll
you.
be able to open school on time? Don't answer. I already sent a letter. Yes.
Just to answer Calvin's previous question, the board has used committees of 3 board members in the past to address kind of special situations.
Okay.
We're doing that right now for the Chase matter, so that's an option down the road.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Okay, looks like we have a number of resolutions, and I know with the last one, On Fowler, we're going to have some discussion, so when we get to there, I'll entertain a motion, and then we'll open it up for discussion. But Joe, why don't you get us started, please?
Yes, so we have resolution number 40, which would be the monthly payment to Landon and Ryan.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 41 would be the monthly payment for the Turner Construction Company.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I think they just earned it over the past 30 minutes.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 42 would be our payment to our insurance agent to extend the builder's risk policy.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 43 would be our monthly payments for the Tranche 1 contractors.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 44 would be our monthly payments for the Tranche 2 contractors.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
And finally, resolution number 45 is a resolution to award a contract for the site work at the Failer Fields to the W.D. Malone Trucking and Excavating Company.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. We'll open it up for discussion now, and Lamont, if you want to just bring us up to speed on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that we're very close to approving their plan. The nature of the project was a little challenging for some of our MWB businesses just because of the nature of the project. But, it's just a specialty type of job. They just have to get us some final documentation, and Landon and Ryan is going to approve their plan, and then I'm going to approve it following that.
Okay.
And that's just really the case of the matter. Any questions?
So, I'm sorry, you talking about in reference to WD?
The field, yeah, WB Mall and their plan, the MWB plan and EEO forms that they have to get to us. So we're they might be a little shy on the WBE part, but they exceeded the MBE part. So we're satisfied with the plan in general, and pretty surprised they were able to get that close because of the nature of the job.
So just to clarify, is our approval contingent on that meeting, that, or you guys being satisfied?
My understanding was that we were essentially in agreement with the plan, that there were a couple of questions, but that it was, we were prepared to approve and sign the contract today.
Yeah, honestly, we could approve the plan now, but they have a couple other things on the table that they can add a little more participation, so we're trying to give them time to do that.
Okay.
So I think the answer is that it's not technically contingent, is it?
Correct, it is not.
However, what sounds like Lamont is saying, that should not be a reason for us to not approve the resolution at this point, that you're confident it's going to get approved.
Okay.
Because they'll be submitting monthly reports, and we'll be monitoring them as they go along. Okay. So there's a continuing dialogue on that.
Right. And we have done this in the past with some other contractors, and it worked out well.
Okay.
Okay.
And just to be clear, and maybe Chris, this is a question for you, but I saw somewhere on here that that timing is challenging on getting the work started in the fall. But assuming the resolution is approved, we think we can. We have sufficient time to get started and get through what we need to in the fall.
We had a kickoff meeting last week or the week before with a contractor, and we outlined the plan to get the resolution approved today.
Carry on.
In doing so, startled me. In doing so, we plan to be on site the middle of September.
Middle of September.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We actually have the contract ready for your signature.
Okay. No pressure. Okay, any further discussion about resolution number 45? We had a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. That's a big deal. Thank you, everybody, for that. Yeah.
Since 1998, we have been waiting.
I won't tell you how old I was in 1998.
How do we get that message out, or superintendent, how do we get that message out, that we're at that point with this?
We'll get a message out as soon as we see some equipment in the building. I'm not saying anything
Touche.
to anybody there
Touche.
because
I rescind my comment.
things do happen.
So that does bring up one other question that I wanted to ask at the last meeting. I know in the past we've talked about how to get all of the news out about the substantial amount of work that's going into and money that's being invested into our schools, and how important it is to tell that story for the school district and the kids going to school. I know one of the ways through this process that we were supposed to be doing that was through a JSCB Facebook page. And I have not seen a lot of activity on that page. Can anybody speak to that? Nobody.
Next meeting, we'll discuss it.
I'll look forward to an update the next meeting. Any further business to come before the board? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody.